Imagine waking up on an abandoned space station, not knowing whether what you see is real or delirium. Now, transform into a little mouse facing a giant world. In the blink of an eye, you're in the Napoleonic trenches, fighting an apocalyptic plague. 2026 isn't messing around. The Sinking City 2. It arrives as a radical turn from third-person survival horror set in the iconic Lovecraftian city of the 1920s, Arkham. Here, the water is not just scenery. It reshapes the map, submerges routes, and forces tactical decisions. Combat was rebuilt from scratch with 1920s-era weapons, a visible wound system, and enemies with specific weaknesses that demand careful ammo management and strategy. There's crafting, a limited inventory, and perks geared toward confrontation. Investigation returns, but now as an option. Exploring yields lore, supplies, and alternative routes without forcing those who prefer to focus on action. Technically, the game uses Unreal Engine 5, Lumen, Nanite, 4K textures, and upscalers like DLSS FSR. The Kickstarter campaign showed that the community supports the project. If you want a survival horror that blends Lovecraftian atmosphere, resource management, and tense combat, and don't mind a city whose layout changes as you progress, The Sinking City 2 looks set to be one of the big titles to watch for 2026. Hunger. This project could be the answer for those craving something truly different in the extraction genre. Set in a Napoleonic Europe devastated by an apocalyptic plague, the game promises the tension typical of extraction shooters, but with a horror atmosphere few have dared to explore. What really stands out are the deep RPG elements. We're talking more than 100 customizable talents, unique abilities for each survivor, and permanent progression even when you lose everything on a raid. The combat proposition is brutal. Napoleonic-era firearms mixed with visceral melee using axes and maces. The setting in the world after the end features forests, monasteries, and citadels infested by the hunger. Creatures spawned by the plague. You can play solo or in trios, facing both these abominations and other players desperate for resources. Of course, the game contains heavy adult content with intense violence and a disturbing atmosphere. But for fans of extraction shooters looking for something beyond generic military fare, Hunger could be an interesting bet to watch. They Left Us Here. It promises to be that sleepless space horror experience. The game throws you into an abandoned space station, drifting in the void, where every corridor tells a macabre story of a crew that simply vanished. What's most interesting is how the narrative works. There are no cutscenes spoon-feeding you explanations. The story unfolds through the environment, scattered notes, and strategically placed objects. It's that environmental storytelling that makes you piece the puzzle together yourself while your heart races. Gameplay mixes tense exploration with cryptic puzzles and locked doors that block your path. Don't expect frantic action. The horror here is psychological, that constant tension that makes you paranoid at every metallic creak echoing down empty corridors. The game is already available to wishlist on Steam, and the demo is almost out. If you like Dead Space, this one definitely deserves your attention. Welcome to Brightville. It promises to be the immersive sim that will make you think of BioShock and Dishonored, but with a unique twist that could revolutionize the genre. Developed by Contrast Games using Unreal Engine 5, the game blends magic and steampunk technology in a wholly original mana-punk world. You control a guardian automaton immune to the AI that rules Brightville. Basically, you're the only free element in a totalitarian city. Magical combat lets you combine spells to create devastating effects, like mixing ice with fire or manipulating magnetic fields. But the real standout is the integrated musical narrative. Characters actually sing during the game, with a professionally orchestrated soundtrack that reacts to your actions. Approach freedom is total: stealth, brawling, or manipulation. The world genuinely reacts, with NPCs following their own routines and changing according to your choices. The Victorian industrial aesthetic mixed with cyberpunk is breathtaking. Satellite Odyssey, Jupiter. This survival horror could be one of the most disturbing games of 2026. Developed by Antifreeze Games, the title drops you on Europa, Jupiter's moon, inside a Soviet dystopia controlled by the artificial intelligence Proton. You play as May, marked as wanted in a station infested with human clones and arthropod mutants. What impresses most is the oppressive retro-futurist atmosphere that blends elements of BioShock with System Shock. The antagonist AI Proton watches your every move while you explore decaying, labyrinthine environments. Gameplay embraces classic survival horror with improvised weapons like a nail pistol, challenging environmental puzzles, and a branching narrative that tackles deep philosophical questions about cloning, artificial consciousness, and what truly defines being human. The series' prologue has already been praised for its psychological tension and narrative density. Satellite Odyssey Jupiter stands out as one of the genre's most original bets, promising a cinematic experience that rivals the best space horror titles. Rules of Engagement: The Gray State. Arriving in 2026 with a very different proposal for the saturated extraction shooter market. The interesting part is the two-phase mechanic. You start from scratch, looting creatures for better gear, and when time runs out, a critical decision arrives. Leave early with guaranteed profit, or risk everything fighting for a seat on that contested helicopter. Another highlight are the deep talent trees inspired by Path of Exile. Strategy and smart build choices beat pure aim skill, which is refreshing. And being completely free to play, with monetization limited to cosmetics only, power cannot be bought, period. This deserves attention. In the alpha quest, the game will feature 3 distinct classes, each specialized in its own playstyle, with deep talent trees full of creative possibilities, Unreal Engine 5, and the promise of endless expansions with new monsters. It could be the alternative many people have been looking for.
Liminal Point.
You know those classic survival horror games that made you afraid to even open a door? Well, Hidworks is bringing back that visceral sense of tension. You play as Lyra, a former rock star who returns to the island where her band was shattered by tragedy. The premise is already sinister, but the game goes further. Limited resources, a cramped inventory, distorted creatures, and a fog that hides more than it should. The standout isn't just the claustrophobic atmosphere. The game toys with the line between reality and nightmare in a way that makes you question every scene. Is that a memory of Lyra's or a hallucination? The isometric perspective with dynamic lighting creates a unique aesthetic, part Death Stranding, part Silent Hill. Scheduled for 2026, Liminal Point promises to be the kind of game you play with headphones on, the lights off, and then can't sleep afterwards. Old school survival horror with a modern face. NORSE, Oath of Blood. Arctic Hazard is bringing something special for fans of tactical strategy. Imagine starting from zero after your father is murdered, your village destroyed, and you cast into exile. That's exactly the premise of NORSE, Oath of Blood. The game blends turn-based tactical combat with village management in the Viking Age. You control Gunnar in his quest for vengeance against Steinar Farspear. But it's not just about swinging axes everywhere. Positioning matters, terrain matters. Each warrior has unique abilities, and you must manage resources, construct buildings, and turn a miserable camp into a feared stronghold. What stands out here is that the script was written by Giles Christian, a best-selling author of Viking novels. It's not every developer who brings a writer of that caliber to an indie strategy game. For those who missed narrative depth in recent tactical titles, this could be the answer.
Aniimo. Paw Print Studio is preparing something that might finally stand toe-to-toe with Pokemon. Aniimo arrives in 2026 as a free-to-play title for Xbox, PC, and mobile, already confirmed for Game Pass, and it brings a bold proposal for the creature-capturing genre. The big innovation here is the twining system. You literally fuse with your creatures, experiencing the world from their perspective and unlocking unique abilities. Imagine capturing hundreds of Animos, evolving them according to the local climate, and then transforming into them to explore the world of Idle in completely different ways. Combat is real-time. Visually, the game bets on charismatic creatures with distinct personalities, 4K technology with ray tracing, and the polish you expect from major titles. Of course, being free-to-play always raises concerns about aggressive monetization, but the closed beta in 2025 brought very positive feedback. If you like Genshin Impact but miss collecting creatures, this one deserves your attention. Ananta. A free-to-play open-world RPG without character gacha? Sounds too good to be true. But Ananta is betting exactly on that. Developed by Naked Rain with a 700-person team, the game has already surpassed 15 million pre-registrations and won the Japan Game Awards 2025 at the Tokyo Game Show. The radical difference? All characters are unlockable for free through the story. Monetization focuses only on cosmetics and customization, breaking the predatory model that dominates many free-to-play games. Gameplay blends the best of several worlds. vertical movement like Spider-Man, combined with tentacle-like abilities reminiscent of Venom, an open urban world inspired by GTA, Yakuza-style melee combat, and hacking mechanics a la Watch Dogs, all set in a metropolis the size of Manhattan with day-night cycles and NPCs that follow realistic routines. Scheduled for 2026 on PS5, PC, and mobile, Ananta could prove that AAA quality free experiences can work without predatory traps. The big question is whether Naked Rain can keep that promise. Valor Mortis. From the creators of Ghost Runner, this first-person Souls-like promises an unusual blend of history and horror that few games have dared to attempt. You're William, a Napoleonic soldier who dies in battle and is reborn with corrupted powers in a 19th century Europe devastated by a mysterious plague. What's interesting here is how the game mixes real historical figures with supernatural elements to create a dark alternate narrative. The combat system follows that classic Souls-like formula where each death makes you stronger, but with a special twist. You channel this corrupting power to unlock devastating abilities. One more level promises intense vertical exploration, something they did very well in Ghost Runner. With a planned release in 2026, this is definitely a title to watch, especially if you enjoy Souls-likes with a strong narrative focus and an alternate historical setting. Hela. Forget the usual beefed-up heroes. Here you play as a little mouse facing a giant world. And believe me, that changes everything. Developed by Wind Up and due in 2026, the game puts you in the paws of this brave mouse on an emotional mission. Save a sick witch by collecting ingredients for magical potions. The Scandinavian touch in the landscapes is breathtaking, with enchanted forests and treacherous mountains that look like they stepped out of a Nordic fairy tale. The standout goes beyond the unique perspective. The game leans heavily on a system where your acts of kindness literally transform the world around you. No gratuitous violence here, instead you get smart puzzles integrated into the narrative and realistic physics that boost immersion. You can play solo or cooperatively, either online or split screen. For anyone tired of being just another generic soldier, Hela promises an adventure where kindness and cooperation are your best weapons. Definitely one to watch. God Save Birmingham. Imagine zombies overrunning an entire medieval city. The 14th century historical charm of Birmingham collides with gore and physics-based mechanics that break any survival routine. You don't just cut off heads, you stack furniture, build ramps with barrels, and use fences as improvised traps. Every object becomes an opportunity. The early access version will give you about a quarter of the city to loot, build, and test tactics, while the full campaign comes later. The game promises raw survival, hunger, thirst, injuries. Nothing is just run and gun, it's thinking with your hands, improvising medieval weapons and using the historical setting, markets, forges, the church, to turn the tide. There's physical comedy, trying to open a door and tripping over a bucket, and violence that doesn't hold back. So consider this a warning. If you like emergent gameplay that rewards creativity and want something that truly feels different among so many survival games, this one deserves a spot on your wish list.
13 attempts to prove that games can still surprise. Notice a pattern here? The interesting projects of 2026 don't come from giant studios with infinite budgets. They come from smaller teams, willing to risk everything on a crazy idea. While AAA publishers copy each other to death, real innovation is happening on the margins. But there's a cruel detail. Most of these games will fail commercially, not because they're bad, but because boldness doesn't pay the bills. Algorithms prefer the safe bet. Marketing prefers the predictable. So every wish list, every share, every conversation about these projects is an act of protest. You're voting for the kind of industry you want to see exist. The question isn't which of these games you'll play, it's which one will you help survive. Leave in the comments which project got you the most hyped and why. If you liked the video, subscribe and leave a like. See you next time.